Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. I'm your host, Marty Bennett, and today on the Roundup for Wednesday, February 7th, 2024, we're going to be answering the following three questions we've been hearing from international educators. First up, what higher ed social media trends should we be looking out for in 2024? Next, how has the U.S. mission in India turned things around since the pandemic? And finally, what should internationalization look like on U.S. campuses? We'll be answering those three questions and more today on the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. Thanks for joining. And as we do each week on the Roundup, we take our questions that we answer here on the Roundup on Wednesdays from our newsletter that comes out on Monday mornings. And for those that aren't familiar, this newsletter is available in two forms. I'm giving you three links in the chat. First up, our smieconsulting.org/subscribe website, where you can scroll down to the subscribe area for all the SMIE news fit to share. That's the name of the newsletter. And in case you're wondering, SMIE stands for Social Media and International Education Consulting. That's the company name. Those are the two themes of our newsletter each week: social media stories that impact what we do in international education, and then also international ed news from national level in the United States, as well as global roundups and solutions that may be useful amongst the news stories of the week. So you can subscribe via the link on our website, smieconsulting.org/subscribe. You can also, I'm dropping the links into the chat for the email version of that. That's the result of subscribing through the website. That will come out Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern every week. And the second link in the chat for this week's edition will be the LinkedIn version of the newsletter, which now in and of itself has over 1,600 subscribers. Together, nearly 1,700 folks are subscribing either via email or LinkedIn to get this important newsletter in your inboxes every Monday morning. For the LinkedIn version, it does come out about a half hour earlier at about 8:30 Eastern every Monday. Now, the two versions of this week's newsletter will provide you the breadth of our hot takes on these topics related to social media and international ed stories of the week. And then we pick the themes that we see developing each week. If there are a couple of three stories that are around a central issue that we can reflect on or expand upon here on Wednesdays in our roundup session, goes a little bit more in depth and talks more through how these individual issues can be viewed on your campuses, how you may or may not be able to adapt how you do what you do related to international student recruitment, international student services, all of these things that impact what we do in international education. So let's get right to our questions of the week. And the first one, as I mentioned, what higher ed social media trends should we be watching out for in 2024? And this is a question that I always get asked, because most of us in international admissions, international student recruitment circles, there are elements of what we do that are social media related. Obviously, how we communicate with prospective students, how we now message individual students or groups of students that we meet while traveling. All of these things are important for us, tools that we need to be aware of. But oftentimes, we're not the ones implementing policy on our campuses. We're not the ones that are really driving how we do what we do when it comes to social in our student recruitment plans. It's usually part of a larger Marcom unit, either within enrollment management or within the larger university that you report to, or everything gets funneled through. So how you can influence or just become aware of what's happening is an important step. Obviously, internationally, we know in certain markets you have to be very flexible in terms of how you try and reach students, because you know they're not all going to be on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok in every country. They may be more on messaging platforms than they are on video platforms or traditional social media platforms like Twitter and YouTube. So these are the things that you need to become aware of. Certainly you are as you travel. You certainly become very familiar with which platforms, messaging apps are most common in each country. There's some great resources out there that will help you develop strategies in each of those major countries. We've talked about some of them in the past, and we'll continue to do so as further news stories arise. I know there may be something coming next week on those fronts as well. But let's talk about what a particular article from Keystone Education Group. They have a number of different social student lead generation platforms that they manage, but also have a number of email and student communication tools that they help institutions with, both in the UK, Australia, and now the US and Canada. They're very actively working with U.S. schools now to try and help them with their ComFlow messaging internationally to deliver the right kind of messages. So they're certainly well plugged into what's happening on digital fronts. They've identified 5 major trends for 2024 that are: make the most of professional photography, create with generative AI tools, lean into your bragging rights authentically and what that looks like, shake it up with user-generated content, and grow your YouTube presence. So some of those seem like fairly straightforward, and yes, absolutely, you need to do that. Some of those are maybe new, like the AI tool, generative AI tools that you can use to create content. And then the bragging rights piece authentically and what that looks like. So they've gone through in their assessment of these five areas, trends that they think we should be looking out for. And there's some real importance in all of them, really, in terms of the challenges that we face. Some are very clear and present in terms of being authentic, engaging with our prospective students in an authentic way, with user-generated content primarily, because that does tend to get the most interaction and engagement. But they do make a very good point, and I've certainly noticed this too, about the use of professional photography. We all have our campus glamour shots that we use in our print materials, in our digital versions of those, and maybe in our social media. And that's the piece that maybe I think I've seen not only through my alma mater and other institutions that I've been associated with over the years that I follow on social platforms, that they have begun using drone footage, drone shots, or campus beauty shots, much more to just engage with alumni bases and prospective student bases and current staff bases. I know, for example, with regard to UNLV, where I work now as Director of Global Recruitment and Partnerships, I work fully remote, but certainly we had an incident in December that really shook our campus. It really helped bring us together in a lot of ways as a campus community to respond as one and to respond to the trauma that we had experienced on December 6th with the shooting that happened on campus. But our social teams from the outset were told, okay, it's got everybody's on the same page here. We're not doing any new promotional messages or anything other than UNLV Strong, hashtag UNLV Strong, and the themes of our social pieces that we'll be putting out are going to be very much healing and restorative and sharing resources with our campus community. All of these things that we needed to do as a campus community to bring ourselves together, to help our faculty, staff, students begin to heal, begin to move on. And they're going to be, it's a long road, obviously, to full recovery. Who knows if we'll ever get there, but there was something as a university that we came together, and particularly I've noticed on social during those first few days and weeks afterwards, the hashtag UNLV Strong certainly has become a real symbol of what we do, much like anytime high schools have shootings or cities are engaged, have these things happen. There's whatever the city, strong is the hashtag that's used, and that's become a sad reality that we have and deal with in our nation here. But what we did as a university, we would repost things from other institutions that showed their support for us. Our sister schools in Nevada that did things flashed the LV sign on social media. They got a group of their staff together, wore our colors on the Friday. We wear Rebel Red on Fridays. So that was something that we would do on our campuses, but we would be having our sister schools in Nevada doing the same thing, and other schools in the Midwest were doing videos in support of what we were doing. We're sharing those out again. So that helps to bring our campus together. There was some professional photography about campus with the UNLV Strong hashtag on it that we were sharing out. Just some really strong images that we were able to use to help engage with our campus community for one, but our friends of UNLV too, that helped bring us together and feel like we were being heard and we were being cared for, and that it wasn't just us alone on an island dealing with this. It's a sad state, as we talked about, that our campus was impacted by this shooting, and and we know we're not the only one. We had folks who've experienced similar shootings on their own campuses reach out to us and share resources with us. It's that kind of social awareness, social media awareness that we had, that we knew we needed to show a united front, that we were going to be able to move forward together as a campus. So that is one of those trends. I'm belaboring this point a little bit much, but I think it's important to recognize that in the positive and in the negative, you can use social to help you move forward. And the campus beauty shots I've noticed from my alma mater, they use those regularly now. And I always see the engagement rates on those are way up off the charts, off of traditional posts on events that might be going on campus. But when it's a really important shot or a visual that really resonates with people connected with the institution, or those that want to be connected with the institution, that matters. And that's making good use of professional photography. And that's probably one that I've seen coming up that I would encourage more of us to do, and use those in our prospective student outreach as well, because there's some real value, I think, in taking those steps forward. Now, probably the one on this list of 5 that jumps out at you is the creating content with generative AI tools and what that looks like. And a lot of us are going to be new into the realm here of what that looks like. But there's a graphic in this Keystone article that has for different platforms. For example, for TikTok, create 5 engaging TikTok post ideas to advertise our campus to new students. Use content from our website, blah, 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 and puts the website link in there. Then write 3 headlines for our Facebook lead generation carousel adverts. Each headline should advertise a different program. The programs are, and put the ones that you want to highlight. Create 3 call to actions for our student email campaigns to encourage them to study for a master's degree. And then this is using Ask ChatGPT. So all these things are ways that you can kind of allow generative AI tools that are out there to help you create the kind of content, so you don't spend hours and hours doing that. You obviously can refine and edit and all of that once you get these ideas, but it's an important tool that you might want to start using in your social content strategy. Then it talks about bragging rights, talking about highlighting those things that are what your school is best known for, and using those and doing so with authenticity. And that's always the trick, right? And how do we do that? And that's they do give some important examples of that in the article. I won't go into now, but ideally the user-generated content should be driving a lot of what you do, because that is where your prospective students in particular are going to be the most engaged in responding and sharing and commenting on those kinds of things. So please make sure you have an important element like that in your social strategies. And the final element is growing your YouTube presence. And it may seem that's kind of, well, don't we all have YouTube channels? And what does that look like? What does it mean to really grow your YouTube presence? I know my son, he's right at the end of Gen Z, beginning of Gen Alpha. He'll be going to college in 4 or 5 years. He's 4 years. Oh gosh, and he lives on YouTube. He has his own YouTube channel. He's created animation content that he has now almost 1,000 subscribers. But he's living on YouTube, and that presence there on how important I think 25% of global mobile traffic is on YouTube. That's just unbelievable, and there's by the end of this year, 2024, there's supposed to be over 933 million users on YouTube. So they'll be crossing into the billion territory that's reserved right now for the meta products of Facebook Messenger and Instagram and WhatsApp. So that understanding of your audience, where they're spending their time, that we always talk about here is live where your audience lives, to use authenticity, use user-generated content, to use AI to help you do your job, and to use the existing professional photographs to really help you leverage your best assets as an institution are 5 solid trends that I would recommend all of us pay some close attention to. Now, moving on to our second topic of the day, and that is how has the U.S. mission in India turned things around so dramatically since the pandemic? And when we talk about this topic, you don't need a way back time machine to figure this out, that when the pandemic hit, we knew China had been the #1 market and had basically shut down. The country had shut down. Our embassy officials and consular officials there weren't able to do their jobs. Their locations were physically shut down, if they were even allowed back into the country. A lot of them had been out of the country for the Lunar New Year celebration in early 2020 and weren't able to get back in. So there was long delays, and then they weren't able to reopen fully until really late into 2021. So there was a lot of challenges in China. In India, there weren't so much the the consulate opening challenges that certainly existed in China. The challenges were the just huge upswing in demand and coupled with reduced staffing that impacted every U.S. consulate and embassy around the world, that there was a dip in staffing available to do these consular interviews, that there were families that had to relocate to the U.S. temporarily. There were all sorts of transitions that were happening that impacted our U.S. Foreign Service's ability to conduct visa interviews, and local conditions on the ground. If there were outbreaks or closures of their embassies or consulates, that impacted ability to meet need. And in India, we've seen it, and to this day, the growth in interest in coming to the U.S., not just for visitors, but particularly for students, has just skyrocketed. And we've seen the U.S. ambassador to India, Gil Garcetti, who is a former mayor of Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken. But he is a very PR-focused ambassador, probably one of the most active in the world in terms of his public relations efforts in the country. And he has, since taking office in 2021, really become kind of a standard bearer for how to refocus a U.S. mission in a major country to the point where they have almost completely transformed their processes top to bottom, through some help from Main State in terms of policies on removing the requirement for visa interviews for folks that have already gotten U.S. visas in the last 4 or 5 years, to streamlining visa appointment processes, to being able to get rid of some of these visa appointment buying agencies that exist in India. There's just been a wealth of changes, ramping up staffing during peak periods, the opening of the new consulate in Hyderabad with 75 visa windows. All of these things have come together in the last 30 years to bring India to the point where it's not perfect yet. There's still, for those that do require interviews for visitor visas, B1, B2 visas, there's still almost a year wait in some locations in India, particularly in Hyderabad. But the student visa rates, interview waits are way down. The other waits for major categories are way down. And for those that already have had visas, processing times are way down as well. So there's some really strong evidence to show that India has made an incredible lines leap forward here. And in terms of numbers, there's a couple articles I'll be dropping in the chat that wait times have some of the stats from the U.S. mission site here on an article that came out on January 29th. The U.S. consular team in India processes more visas than ever before in 2023, bringing down visitor visa appointment waits by 75%. They processed in the last year, calendar year, a record-smashing 1.4 million U.S. visas. Demand across all visa classes was unprecedented in the country, with a 60% increase in applications compared to 2022. And now Indians represent 1 out of every 10 U.S. visa applicants around the world. Not visa approved, but visa applicants. 1 out of 10 globally that are applying for U.S. visas are Indian. Now, we've seen the rebound to over 700,000 B1, B2 visas. That's the second highest on record. And they had achieved this through 3-month staffing surge in Mumbai in the early part of 2023, and then increased permanent staff levels and the employment of some tech solutions to, again, cut down on those wait on the appointment buying process. The wait time for visitor visas, is down from an average of 1,000 days, 3 years almost, to only 250 days around the country, and minimal in other categories. And here's the one that obviously impacts us in international education. In 2023, the U.S. consular team issued over 140,000 student visas, more than any other country in the world, setting a record for the last for third year running. And if you look at Mumbai, New Delhi, Hyderabad, and Chennai, those are now the top 4 student visa processing posts in the entire world. So none of the China ones even make that top 4 list. So because of that, they're now Indian students, as we've seen from the SIVAs by the numbers data, are now the largest single group of international students in the United States. And that they make up more than a quarter of the overall 1 million plus international students in the U.S. So they have really done a remarkable job, and we know how important in India post-study work is, and H-1Bs are, direct H-1Bs from India are even, that there in 2023 there were 380,000 employment visas that were processed for Indians and their family members, and that they were able to do that through a petition-based visa processing system in Chennai and Hyderabad, which increased efficiencies. That in 2024, they're going to be piloting a project for eligible H-1B holders to renew their visas in the U.S., so they don't have to come home for that, which is great. I know when my family were renewing our L2 visas, L visas with my dad, the second version of that, for second 3-year term, we had to go home for a period of time to get the visas processed back in England before we came back to the U.S. So a lot of really great strides forward in India by the U.S. mission there. Certainly you see some interesting articles, particularly how India is obviously very proud of how significant a role they are having in the U.S. economy in terms of growth for their citizens that are looking to go abroad and work and potentially return. All of that is just some really strong evidence, and they're very proud of that in India, that how closely tied our two countries are with that. So some really strong content there from the U.S. mission in India to really from a time during COVID where wait times were just outrageous and staffings were half or a quarter of what they originally should have been. So there's been some amazing progress in India in the last 3 years. So kudos to the team in India for all their strong work in growing the ability of Indians to study in the United States as well as visit and work. Now, the final question of the day, what should internationalization look like on U.S. campuses? Now, this is a very important question. Obviously, we're engaged in the middle of that here at UNLV. We started that process in 2021 when I first joined as a consultant. After a year, moved in from a consultant role into my current role as a director of global recruitment and partnerships. But one of the key elements in making that shift from no internationalization strategy and just kind of dealing with students as they came, sending students where we could, not really having any coordinated approach to partnerships or research or anything like that, we now are in a position where we are not perfect by any stretch, but we're making solid gains for international inbound students. We are now focusing on making sure the services that we are providing to them as new students living in the United States and during their time on campus through to graduation and becoming successful alumni, that we now are engaging not just International Student Office, not just the admissions office, but every office on campus that touches the lives of international students has to be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. And too often on campuses, other offices that play vital roles for international students really don't have the understanding of what their needs are from the outset. And when you're building an internationalization strategy, part of that process is everyone has to be involved in supporting the students that you're trying to successfully graduate. And we know, because we're in the business in international, we know our students have different needs and different restrictions on them that the traditional U.S. citizen or permanent resident has. Just like the Dreamers have very different restrictions on them as opposed to our military vets, as opposed to our first-gen students and other minority student groups on our campus. Those have unique needs, and they're catered to in greater or lesser extents across the campus community. And offices need to be aware of their needs. And similarly for international students, where there are usually those challenges most significantly faced after the initial enrollment process begins are at the end with regard to career services and alumni status and what that means and how those two offices that can be linchpins to making an international student's experience on campus memorable and even enhanced because they're able to get them that first job, get them plugged into an alumni network overseas if they're going home. All of those things all the good that might have been done with their great time as a student on campus could be for naught if they're not supported right at those critical moments before they leave and as they're leaving campus. So these are things that we're developing on our campus that need to be part of overall internationalization efforts for our university. Similarly for study abroad, expanding the range of programs, getting them engaged more earlier in their cycle for undergraduate students so that they're considering short-term summer programs after their first year or into their winter term perhaps between fall and spring terms of their second year. Getting them thinking about studying abroad, planting those seeds from orientation or before they arrive on campus that, hey, this is a reality, that you can study abroad for at or below the same cost that you would if you were staying on campus for a summer or for a semester. So those are the things that we're trying to do, and incorporating a framework for internationalizing partnerships that we have with universities abroad and what those look like, and establishing those procedures and working individually with colleges who want to grow their international footprint and through research collaborations, through dual degrees and other opportunities. Those are the things that are part of what we're trying to do. There are two articles that came out in the last week that speak to some of these issues that I'm talking about here. First is from a legend in international education, John Hudzik, formerly of Michigan State. I think he might be even retired now from there. But he is one of the more prolific writers and thinkers in our field on internationalizing higher education. And he points to the vital role of faculty in the internationalization efforts. And this is when we talk internationalization here, we're talking about curriculum in terms of research, in terms of the faculty that are brought into campus through exchanges, through hires, all of these things. The partnerships that we build across campuses, across borders, faculty have to play a driving role in that. Deans can lead, but the faculty are the real doers of bringing in folks to do research with, to working with their counterparts in other institutions to develop joint programs, to lead short-term study abroad, to facilitate scholars and researchers from other campuses and perhaps exchange students on certain campuses, leading those efforts. So these are the faculty, and John makes a very strong case that they need to be even more important in that role for internationalization, and having their champions in each of the colleges on your campus who are those faculty that can help drive things forward. And I have to agree with them there, because on larger comprehensive colleges and universities with 10, 12 different colleges or more on a campus, there's going to be such disparate levels of willingness to engage and appetite to engage and actual staff who want to engage internationally, and those identifying those folks and keeping them all engaged and in the loop and informed as to what some of the challenges we're facing are. That has to be a priority. So that faculty piece is so important in helping develop the kind of learning how to deal with hostile departmental culture in some campuses, to those that are where there's real opportunity for synergies interdisciplinary on a college campus to present a united front to prospective partners. All of those things are real value adds to an internationalization strategy. So kudos to John for this article. Certainly well read and very well researched and thorough article will give a lot of opportunity for those that are looking for the ideas on how to better engage with faculty and what that looks like on a major college campus. Now, the other half of this equation is the SIO role, the Senior International Officer role. And talking about internationalization a few days before the AIEA conference that's happening in DC annually in February. This topic of that conference itself is for SIOs and those that lead international efforts on college campuses. And it attracts institutional representatives from around the world each year. And in terms of advancing the profession and internationalization, how SIOs can lead the charge, there's a great article from Pi News this past week that really talks to these in terms of leading the intentional collaborations, not only how SIOs play that role, not only on campus by bringing those departments and college units together to work together as an institution to expand international efforts, but also to lead overseas efforts to find the right partners. And that's a key element in finding those right partners that make sense for an institution, that are good fits for an institution. And I know where we started at UNLV when I came on board a couple of years ago in my staff role, partnerships had been handled by Study Abroad, and it was an office that kind of just help the MOUs happen and cooperation agreements happen. And now we're being much more intentional about kind of leading some of the efforts. We know it's not always going to be us led. It's some of it's going to be top down from the president. We want to work with this institution. Some it's going to be faculty up or college level up, and others are going to be driven through our internationalization efforts as a campus through our global education unit, global education initiatives unit. So the role of the SAO, and at UNLV we don't have one yet, and that's a challenge we have. We have basically our three directors, executive directors of our international unit, Study Abroad, Student Service, Scholar Services, and my Global Recruitment and Partnerships that kind of lead our Global Education Initiatives team. We report up to the Senior Vice Provost, who is technically our SIO now. So she has many other responsibilities on campus and really can't commit full time to what we need done for an SIO role. So we do that by committee. And that's not an ideal situation, but it's something we're working towards to eventually having that SIO role. And that person eventually can help really drive forward our efforts to internationalize across campus and be on the senior leadership team for the university. And if it's really going to be taking that seriously as a priority goal for an institution. So that's all we have for you today on the Midweek Roundup. We appreciate you spending the time with us, and we look forward to chatting with you in the weeks and months to come. We will be live again next week and the week after before we head out of town to API at the beginning of March, and then other events in Vietnam the following week. So we look forward to chatting with you in the weeks to come. Please remember to share out this Midweek Roundup to your colleagues if they're not already connected with us, as well as subscribe to the newsletter that comes out on Mondays. So until next time, we wish you the very best. Cheers.